really excited to have you here joining us today for our second edition of Marketing Connected Live. Again, my name is Tim Bishop, VP Marketing and Experience for the Canadian Marketing Association. And really what we're going to be looking at today is about brands. And as you may have seen, Mitch wrote a blog for us over the last week or so, and really talking about how brands are needing to reinvent themselves and really look to the future, because things are going to be somewhat different. We all know that. And so Mitch is going to be talking with John today about how to really invigorate that conversation and invigorate your brand to get ready for what's next. I see that we're at 10:02, so we're going to get started very, very shortly. Again, thanks for joining us today for our second edition of Marketing Connected Live. And with that, I would like to introduce our president and CEO, John Wiltshire, who's going to be introducing Mitch Joel, the president and founder of 6 Pixels Group. John, over to you. Have a great conversation.
Thanks, Tim. Great to be here and great to have Mitch with you. How are you doing, Mitch?
I'm doing great, and it's lovely to see you, John, again.
Yeah, it's great. I think the last time that we were together in person, although I talked to you on the phone a few times and over the internet, but in person was when I was with IG, and I come down to Montreal to have a discussion with Twist, and there you were, and it was a great conversation. I think, you know, it struck me from that conversation. I've always remembered it. Mostly because of the generosity at a first meeting of you coming up with some, I think you had 5 really great ideas that you just kind of gave away. And I was always taken by that. Can you explain a little bit about that to us today, and also maybe how you got started in marketing and what makes you different?
Those are 3 very different and complex questions that I'll try to tackle. So I started off in the rock music journalism world. I was a journalist for many years and then a publisher of magazines, but became very deeply fascinated in technology from the early 80s basically on. And so I was one of the first people who was putting these print publications onto these digital channels, which was very early days of the internet. From there, I helped launch one of the first search engines online, and then I did some work with 20 plus years ago before that was something. I launched a record label for a little bit before coming to meet my partners at Twist Image, which was Montreal based, which is where I still live. We had a 4th partner, Toronto, and then kept growing and had a really good run. And about 6 years ago, we sold the business over to WPP, and then we took a bunch of agencies that had been acquired through the J. Walter Thompson channel at the time, and built the Thompson banner. And it was a really fun run. In the early 2000s, blogging became a thing. I just thought this would be a great way to really communicate the value proposition of what the agency does. In my own naive way, I just didn't realize that not many agencies were speaking a person, a human voice, and sort of broadcasting and publishing ideas out into the world. That blog became 6 Pixels of Separation, and then I started doing a podcast in early 2006 as well that continues to this day. And I've just always been someone who believes that ideas are there and they're shareable, and what we do with them and how we turn them into actionable strategies that we can use for our customers is actually the real win. So while it's nice of you to remember me from that moment in that meeting, I think all I really do for a living is think and ruminate and try to have ideas. Most of them don't get executed on, but I'm happy to share them. And I've always lived that way in terms of both how I deal with myself as a community member, my professional life and my personal life, that sort of credo of giver's gain. Like the more you give and the more value you create, the more value there is to extract for everybody, not just for me and my business. So it's been an incredible journey, and I find myself now missing my Canadian Marketing Association family. I was involved in the digital council there from very early days. I wound up becoming a chairperson for the board of directors. And to this day, you know, when people talk about my blog or my speaking or my books, and then they ask me about like, how do you really generate, how did you grow your agency? I actually really align a lot of the success of the Canadian Marketing Association from the people I met to just the relationships that were built, and even in my day-to-day of being involved in so many associations and speaking at them, just the value that the CMA created for myself and the agency just leaves a very warm spot in my heart. So I was super excited when you reached out to connect. I miss my CMA family, so here we are.
That's great. And, as you're talking about, to a degree, the Mitch Joel brand, and it's got integrity, and it is what it is, and it's consistent. And I think that's tremendous. And I reached out to you, and you wrote what looks to me like a poem. Now, first of all, is it a poem? And second of all, why did you take this approach this time?
Yeah, it's been a style that I've been working on for a bit. I think my best content formats for me that I create are long form text, article writing, and also long form audio. So my podcast or doing radio and stuff like that. And there's been sort of some trends, and trends are that you'll walk into an airport bookstore when we went to airports, and a lot of the sort of newer books are these sort of small format little books, like my friend Michael Bungay Stanier, who wrote The Advice Trap more recently, or The Coaching Habit. And he's not alone. There's many books like this that are just sort of smaller, and all the fluff and all the extra stuff and adjectives are gone, and it's just this real tactical thing. And on the other side, I think people still very much want bits and bits of content. So the other example would be my friend Seth Godin, and how every day he has this really sort of paragraph to 2 or longer, however he feels, piece of content. And I just started realizing that I like playing with words. I like that sort of cutting down of that sort of minimalism attitude and approach. And I just started writing like that. And I was just posting them to Facebook sort of randomly. And it sort of has a prose feel to it totally. I never studied poetry or prose, so I don't know. I'll just assume. I'm not even really a fan. Like my closest link to poetry are people like Charles Bukowski and Henry Rollins. That's about as close as I get to it. And it seemed to get a lot of likes, and I was getting side comments from people saying that it really felt personal. And then I think the other big thing about it is, when I was building 6 Pixels of Separation as a corporate blog and podcast, I was always very reticent to be too emotional. And I was very reticent to mention brands or individuals, because you never know who might be a client or who might shift over to become a client. And in the past 2 years, it's been a real journey for both the podcast and my written word to write as me and not a representative of an organization. And again, I find in that I'm finding newer values and things. So it's easy to consume, it's fast, and I'm trying to make it very tactical as well. And I think in that article, there's a lot of tactics to think about. There's a lot of meat to chew on and questions that you'll ask.
Yeah, no, I found it quite interesting. I found, I don't know about you, but I found during this COVID crisis, the idea of reading something long or watching an intense documentary has been something that my brain just doesn't want to process it. I guess maybe there's more chemicals in my brain that it doesn't allow me to concentrate. So sometimes, doing it like in a prose form cuts through some of that. I found some great value in that.
I feel that way too. Like Chuck Wendig, who's an amazing author, and he actually writes a lot about writing. He talks about his brain being like very thick pudding now, and it's like hard to sort of poke your finger through that pudding. I read like 70 to 100 books a year. Like I'm a voracious reader. I haven't read a book since February 22. Like I just can't. I'm the same way. Like I sit down and my mind's wandering. So I'm consuming a lot of content. I'm taking more notes. I'm feeling more creative recently.
Yeah.
But it is, look, we are walking around in a haze. I had to change to summer tires yesterday, and I wondered, like, why should I even bother? But I did. And I realized I hadn't been in my car or been out in forever. And it's bizarre because you drive around in this world, and we're on Zoom in this world that seems very normal. But then when you zoom in and you realize every store is closed and every business is closed and the people are wearing masks, you suddenly do start feeling like, did I just wake up in a Stephen King novel?
Yeah.
And I think it's an understandable thing. And what I want to sort of tag on to what you're saying, John, is that it's good and it's normal, and you shouldn't beat yourself up, nor should I, nor should anybody who's
Yeah,
participating in this. It's fine to do nothing. And people are like, you got to side hustle and kick it up and take your career. And it's fine
yeah,
to do nothing. These are abnormal times. We can't just ignore this abnormality. So don't be so
yeah.
hard on yourself.
That's a
Yeah,
good point. I blog to my staff every day in this crisis, and I did one blog on just kind of it's okay to not feel okay, and
totally.
I think that's absolutely correct, and it seemed to resonate with them in a way that there's this expectation that everything's good. Well, it's not. It's very very different.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's going to be very different for a very long time, I think. I think
yeah,
it's going to take a while for us all to recover from it.
yeah, no, I think that's right. Yeah, so I was thinking about asking you to reinterpret your prose online, and I remembered that Robert Frost poem, "The Road Not Taken." He was interviewed once for that, and he says, "What do you want me to do? Say it again, only worse." And
Right.
when he was asked to interpret it, so at risk of that, you're already talking about the consumer mentality, the mindset of the consumer. Um, do you think this is here to stay for some time, or are there aspects of this which will go beyond the quarantine time into the new, call it new normal?
It's a great question. And what I'm challenging myself to do, and I'm going to challenge everyone to do, is to understand that, like, in this moment, we have to hold two concepts in our brains always at the same time. So, on one hand, the track I was originally going down is okay, we wake up and it's recording this May 13th, 2020. And our prime minister, Justin Trudeau comes out, and our premier in Quebec, François Legault, comes out and says, we're turning the lights back on. Everything's
Right,
fine.
right,
Open your businesses, full force, go. Forget social distancing, forget masks, forget all that, just go. The thing that I'm trying to hold in my mind here is consumer behavior. Will it come back? Will they buy the way they bought? And the reason I say that is because now we've been in this for 2 months, and consumers have been looking at their Visa bills and their Amex bills and their MasterCard bills and their general bills and going, wow, the only thing I'm really spending money on is groceries ultimately right now. And I do think it's going to cause reflection on, what do I really need to buy? What was providing me with real value in the moment when I really needed it? And I think there's a big difference between buying and shopping. They're two different things. So the one concept is, even if all the lights were turned on today, will they buy the way they bought? And it's a precarious question or thought experiment to go
right,
down. The other hand, we have to be able to look at what happens. And so, for example, if you look at Seoul in South Korea, when they opened up, people were rage shopping. Like, they were like actively out there buying in droves because they missed it so much. It was like
right.
angry, like they're going to spend and spend and spend, which makes you look at some of the openings we've seen in North America, even, and see the crowdedness of them and wonder, like, have we been away so long that we're going to spend and spend more actively and just be happy to be out? And the truth to the answer is, I don't know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
everything that we talk about, whether it's the article I wrote about the future of brands, is really predicated on this concept that I keep grappling with, which is like, I have to hold two very disparate concepts in my mind at the same time, right? Will the economy just sort of lights on and people come back and go, or will this be 3 years of struggle? Will the thousands and millions of people who've been furloughed and laid off suddenly be hired as soon as we open it up, or are we going to see a massive percentage of those people not going back to work? Will we have to pay back all this money that the government's given us, or will it be the global economy basically saying, let's just write off 2020 and move forward as if nothing happened? It's very hard to know. So it's a long way to say, the thing we can do best as marketers and business leaders today is to be able to think of these two concepts that are quite divergent and hold them in our minds at both times as potential tracks that we might have to go down.
that's really interesting, and I think that it's true that it's hard to know, even if you do research and you do primary research, you survey people, how they're feeling today is they don't know what tomorrow looks like. heavily influenced by the media, who doesn't know what tomorrow looks like, and you get these political discussions and these animated views on health, specific to COVID versus health of the economy. We are living in very interesting times. I wanted to bridge over to um, your recommendations of what brands should do, and I found it very interesting actually. I'm kind of a semi fan of sushi. It's good. I wouldn't want it every day, but it is good to have. But why a sushi chef? Like you could have picked anything really, but why did you go to a sushi chef?
So one of the four business partners at Twist Image Miram was Aubrey Rosenheck, who was our chief financial officer and COO as well. And he's a close and dear friend. And him and I have office space together. We work together on Six Pixels Group, which is essentially a holding company for speaking and media and investing and stuff like that. And our office is about a 7-minute walk from the house I'm in here in Montreal. And he's about also very, very nearby. We're sort of living parallel lives as friends as well. And there is a very famous sushi shop right in that area from Antonio Park, who most people in Canada know because he's like a super chef. He's on the Food Network. A friend of mine who's a Hollywood talent manager manages him as well, books and fame and all that. And his restaurant is really beautiful. And I'm in there quite a bit. And he's a great human being, but it's small. And I wonder on the best of days, how many sittings he gets. Is it 2? Probably 2, I guess, per night. And he does lunches. He started with lunches a while back. And I thought, this is really interesting how suddenly he's offering free pickup and suddenly he's offering free delivery. And part of me was really happy about that. And I think that's a great move. But part of me was also a bit kind of angry, if I'm going to be honest, because it took this pandemic and the fear of him being shut down maybe to provide services that customers probably really want. Now, put that aside and go, well, it's good that he's doing this. I don't know how many people he would have in a seating, but I'm going to presume that when you open it up to pickup and delivery, suddenly it's unlimited. And there's a lesson in there for brands and marketers. How can you make what is your physical limitation open or more accessible to many? And then I started going down this thought experiment of what could you do if you had one sushi shop in one city. And most brands aren't faced with that. They have, much bigger access. And the list sort of goes through in the article of he could do sashimi Sundays, where every day you get some sashimi delivered to your house and then you hop on Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, and you have a lesson with him about how to cut it, how to prepare it, where it's from, what it should taste like. He could offer, because he's a celebrity, a virtual hangout where you pay a small fee and you hop into a Zoom call like this and everybody can just talk about things and he can give some tips and guides. He could be building a list now to provide email marketing through and provide interesting tips or menu suggestions or new plates that he's experimenting on. You can kind of go down this road where you realize from selling fish in one restaurant, he's also now selling a service. He's now also selling a subscription model. He's now also selling education. He's now also selling entertainment. And I found myself going through this, again, a thought experiment and holding these two concepts in my brain at the same time and realizing that he is not alone. B2B, B2C, small, medium, large businesses can do this. I literally did a call like this the other day for the Association of Independent Music Merchants. So local music instrument sellers, and they're not the big box, they're not the big chains. And if you think about their ability to be part of, music and the community, they could offer up, kids are home now. If they need tutoring in music, they could offer that on Zoom. So many new ideas come out of this. And what I realized is that in my main keynote that I do, it's called Disrupting Disruption, that a lot of the inspiration that I'm trying to deliver in it is predicated on this idea of how many new services and products that you have opportunistically to deal with. And the provocation in the article that I wrote for the CMA was really about two things. One is, I hope this sushi chef, which is basically an aphorism for you, not only try these new experiments in business, but more importantly, if there is some form of normal, and some argue that normal was broken, so it will never be normal, that's another conversation, that they continue it, that they keep going, that they don't revert back to the way it was, because this is a truly omni-channel approach. I mean, that word omni-channel, especially from a retail perspective, has been beaten to death. It's a term we've been talking about forever.
Yeah.
And yet suddenly what has happened in this moment is that we have had that thing that I was hoping we would have back when I started in the late 80s, this true digitization, that we are now there. We have critical mass. You know, our friends at Loblaws are super busy because everybody is now online and ordering. We have the youngest of the youngest who are now spending, I think, unfortunately, too much time on screens, but they are becoming adopted at it from a kindergarten level up at a very sophisticated technology, which is simple to use.
Yeah.
And then we have our seniors, our most vulnerable, who need to be all in on this online ordering and e-commerce and all that stuff. And we're seeing it in the markets in examples that we talked earlier about my friend Harley Finkelstein at Shopify and how well they've been doing.
Yeah, that's great. It's almost like, as I reread that, I'm going to call it poem, because I think there's some real nice structure to it. I reread that this morning, and what kind of struck me was, when you think of the 4 P's of marketing, one of them being place, from way back, it struck me that, place of where the consumer is, that you can't build it and they would come anymore, particularly in this environment. But I think long term, you got to follow them. You got to be wherever they're at. This notion of presence, and that Chris talked about last week. Is that true? And to what degree?
Yeah. I mean, it's fully true. I mean, Chris Stamper, was our client back. TD was one of our biggest clients at Twist Image and Miram. And so I have a long-standing relationship with Chris. We sat together on the board at the Canadian Marketing Association. And not that Chris isn't one of the smartest people that I know, because he absolutely is one of the best marketers I know. But I was writing about this in 2003. Why would you choose? Like, the analogy is really, if we want to go back to retail, is on any given day, you're hoping that somebody walks down that one street in that one city and walks by your one store and comes in and goes, oh, you have things that I need, unless you're a destination, which is few and far between. But the digital world basically allows you to have that infinite aisle 24/7 and the ability to be there. And it's not just retail, it's B2B, it's B2C, it's products, it's services, it's education tools, any aspect of it. And so, John, when you ask that question, it reminds me of this certain plateau that we hit in the agency, which was, I felt that we hit this moment where we were no longer in the convincing business. Come in and explain to me why I need a website, which was the early days of our business. And it flipped. And when things flipped and started really hitting our flywheel and our growth, it was because everybody started recognizing we can't move forward without one of these website things. And so I do believe that, here we sit in 2020 in the moment where we have had this critical mass of usage. So I believe it because I've lived it. I believe it because it's a drum I've been beating for so long. And I believe it because it's afforded me a really incredible life. And I don't just mean financially, I mean just holistically as what keeps me busy. And if I can impart anything to, my fellow members of the Canadian Marketing Association and friends out there, it would be to think very deeply about how much more you could use to connect. Newsletters are really the rage, but the truth is it's not newsletters as promotions. It's newsletters as a way to write in a human voice to your customer. And if you think about it, during a moment like a COVID-19 that we're having, it's tremendously powerful to have a real person write a real letter, even though it's being distributed mass, to customers and explaining things and by the way, providing value, not just shilling. We have a special, we're desperate, we have curbside pickup, whatever it is. Provide leadership. This is a moment where people are looking to the leaders. And unfortunately, from a health and a government perspective, the leaders don't know, because these are unknowns. But your business, your leadership position. And from a marketing perspective, nothing could be more powerful, because it's that trust that creates the bond, and it's that bond that creates a truly defendable brand. And ultimately, that's what we need to go for.
That's great. And I think that's a good place to kind of close a little bit. But I'm interested, because you're actually answering the question I had, which is, what should marketers be doing right now? I'm interested though also, what's next for Mitch? like where do you see the world going for you in the near future?
Yeah, it's probably the worst day ever to ask me that, John, because as somebody who really thought I was going to be in a place where I would do a lot of, full-time
Yeah,
keynote speaking and then doing my investing and advising and all that, you can imagine that here I sit in a world where my schedule is quite clear for the foreseeable future.
yeah,
And the truth is, it's not like the work that you do where you're working from home today, but inevitably you can imagine going back to HQ at the CMA.
yeah, sure.
I can't imagine standing up on stage in front of 3,000 people sitting shoulder to shoulder in the moment we're in today. But that being said, part of the work that Aubrey and I have been doing has been really looking at other areas of interest. And the areas of interest for me that are still sort of speaking the most in our ears have to do with this world of commerce and the world of Shopify and the
Right,
relationships I have there, which aren't just with the senior team there, but rather with just the whole model of what it is. I'm a big believer in that direct to consumer play. I'm a big believer in the power of marketplaces. And I think Shopify's built a lot of different marketplaces, but that provides tremendous opportunity for others to think about how can we build a marketplace. And on the other side, I do think that we are going to move towards this contactless world, right? We're seeing it now with payments, but I think what's really going to drive that is the power of voice. And so anything related to the voice assistant technology and smart speaker world is another area that I've been spending a lot of time and energy towards. And I'm sure within me that startup-y bug is either coming back or I'm feeling it more and more. But those are the areas that I'm paying attention to. But at the same time, I would very much push them as macro thoughts for every business, especially marketers, to think about. What's
yeah,
going to happen when we're using voice to control technology more and more? How are we going to be more direct to consumer in a world that is now demanding it? How are we going to think about not just our own destination, but marketplaces, either building our own or being a part of them? Uh, those three alone will occupy a lot of brain energy, I promise you.
yeah. Thank you. And I think that I have no doubt that you're going to be a big part of the voice of marketing in the future. I really appreciate you spending some time with us today, and look forward to hearing from you in the future as well. So, Mitch, thanks a lot. Tim, we're going to turn it back over to you to close the session up.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John and Mitch. Fantastic conversation. And we've got Marketing Connected Live #2 in the books. Really appreciate you tuning in today. And for all of you who are listening at home, we are excited about hosting our next Marketing Connected Live with Jan Kessel, President and CEO of Environics Analytics. And that's coming up next Friday, May 22nd at 10 o'clock Eastern. So please tune in for that. Again, thank you to John, thank you to Mitch, and everyone across the country. Enjoy the long weekend. I think we've got some spring weather coming. I think we all deserve it. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.